Rome, the 10th of August, 258 AD. The sun scorches the eternal city like a curse from the gods. A crowd gathers sweating, silent, spellbound not for a festival, but for a spectacle of horror. In the center of the square stands a massive iron grill, glowing red above a bed of embers. And beside it, a man in chains. Not a criminal, not a traitor, a deacon, a holy man. And he is about to be roasted alive. The heat is unbearable. The air smells of smoke and burning flesh. But instead of screams, he smiles. And with a calm, almost amused voice, he turns to his executioner and says, "You can turn me over, this side is already done." Who was this man who laughed in the face of death? What kind of faith burns hotter than fire itself? Tonight, we uncover the martyrdom of St. Lawrencia tale, so surreal, so defiant, it still sets the heavens ablaze every August night. Before he became a martyr, St. Lawrence was just a young man from the Roman province of Hispania, what we know today as Spain. Born around 225 AD in the town of Huesca, Lawrence was raised in a Christian household during a time when Christianity was still illegal, persecuted, and underground. From an early age, he showed signs of spiritual devotion, pursuing theological studies in Caesar Augusta modern-day Zaragoza. It was there that Lawrence met a man who would forever shape his destiny, the future Pope Sixtus II. The bond between student and mentor ran deep, founded on shared faith, courage, and a vision for a church under siege. When Sixtus eventually journeyed to Rome and rose to the papacy in 257 AD, Lawrence followed closely behind. Recognizing Lawrence's intellect, loyalty, and unshakable faith, Sixtus appointed him to one of the most important roles in the early church, Archdeacon of Rome, first among the 7 deacons. It was a position of immense responsibility, both spiritually and practically. Lawrence wasn't just a liturgical figure. He was the administrator of the church's wealth, the protector of its sacred relics, and the steward of alms for the poor. At a time when Roman emperors were actively hunting Christian leaders, Lawrence was entrusted with the lifeblood of the Christian community. His hands touched gold and holy objects, but his heart remained with the hungry, the sick, and the forgotten. This role placed him at the very heart of Rome's Christian resistance, visible, vital, and vulnerable. And when persecution came knocking, Lawrence would not run. He would rise. The quiet young man from Huesca was about to become one of the most legendary figures in Christian history, not by wielding power, but by surrendering everything in the name of faith. The peace that had briefly settled over the Christian community in Rome was shattered in 257 AD, when Emperor Valerian unleashed one of the most brutal waves of persecution the Church had ever faced. In a desperate effort to restore traditional Roman religion and consolidate power, Valerian issued a chilling edict. All Christian clergy bishops, priests, and deacons were to perform public sacrifices to the Roman gods or face immediate exile. It was a calculated strike at the heart of Christian leadership, but Valerian was not finished. The following year, in 258 AD, he escalated the persecution with a second edict. This time, exile was no longer an option. Christian leaders who refused to renounce their faith would be summarily executed. The empire had declared open season on the church. On the 6th of August, 258, tragedy struck the Christian underground in Rome. While celebrating the liturgy in the catacombs of Praetextatus, Pope Sixtus II was ambushed by Roman soldiers. Alongside him, 4 of the church's 7 deacons were arrested and immediately beheaded. News of the arrest spread like wildfire. Lawrence, the Archdeacon of Rome, rushed to the scene in a desperate attempt to be with his mentor. According to tradition, as the guards led Sixtus away to his death, Lawrence cried out, "Father, where are you going without your son? Holy priest, where are you going without your deacon?" Sixtus, knowing his time had come, turned to Lawrence with a prophetic reply. "I do not leave you, my son. I merely go before you. In 3 days you will follow." That haunting promise would prove true. Rome had already claimed the head of the church. Now, it turned its gaze to the man who held its heart and its treasures. Lawrence's fate was sealed. After the execution of Pope Sixtus II, Lawrence became the next target of the Roman authorities. As Archdeacon of Rome and the Church's chief treasurer, he was believed to hold the key to a vast fortune: gold, silver, relics, and precious vessels. The prefect of Rome, hungry for power and eager to enrich the empire, summoned Lawrence and issued a clear command: deliver all the treasures of the Church within 3 days. Lawrence did not protest. He asked for time and received it. But what Lawrence did with those 3 days would become the stuff of legend. Instead of gathering riches, he distributed them. Every coin, every valuable object he could find, he gave away insolently, quickly, and with purpose. He used the Church's wealth to feed the hungry, clothe the poor, and care for the sick. He knew his time was short, but his mission was clear. When the deadline arrived, Lawrence returned to the prefect. But he did not come with sacks of gold. He came with people: the blind, the crippled, the orphaned, the diseased, the forgotten. Gesturing to the crowd, he declared with solemn boldness, "Behold the true treasures of the Church." The prefect was stunned, and then, enraged, he saw not humility, but mockery. He had expected gold and jewels, not a parade of beggars. In his eyes, Lawrence had defied imperial authority and made a fool of him before the empire. There would be no quick death, no beheading. The punishment had to be cruel, public, and humiliating. And so the sentence was passed. Lawrence would be roasted alive on a red-hot iron grill. What Rome intended as torture, Lawrence would transform into eternal testimony. The sentence was carried out with deliberate cruelty. Lawrence was bound and stretched across a massive iron grill, placed above smouldering embers. But this was not a swift execution, it was a calculated act of torment. The heat was intense but controlled, designed to cook the flesh slowly, painfully, inch by inch. The crowd gathered in grim anticipation, expecting screams, pleas for mercy, or the kind of agony that would make even the strongest men break. But Lawrence did not scream. He prayed. He gazed heavenward with serenity, his face illuminated not by the fire beneath him, but by something seemingly divine. And then, to the complete astonishment of the crowd, he spoke not in pain, but in jest. "You can turn me over, this side is already done." A joke, on the grill. In the middle of his own execution, the crowd gasped, the executioners faltered. What kind of man could endure such agony and still smile? What kind of faith could burn hotter than fire? Witnesses claimed that, rather than the acrid stench of burning flesh, Lawrence's body released a pleasant fragrance. His expression remained peaceful, almost radiant, as if he were being purified rather than punished. And something extraordinary happened. Among the spectators were several Roman senators, men of power, status, and tradition. Moved by what they saw, shaken by the unearthly strength of this man's spirit, some are said to have converted to Christianity on the spot. What was meant to be a gruesome warning became a holy revelation. Lawrence's death didn't silence the Church, it lit it aflame with new believers. His body may have been consumed by fire, but his courage ignited a legacy that Rome could never extinguish. After his death, St. Lawrence's body was quietly retrieved by fellow Christians and laid to rest along the Via Tiburtina, just outside the walls of Rome. For a time, his grave was a humble tribute to a man who had defied an empire. But as centuries passed, that quiet resting place would grow into something monumental. When Christianity was finally legalized under Emperor Constantine in the early 4th century, the Church honored Lawrence's martyrdom by constructing a basilica over his tomb. That simple memorial would evolve into the grand Basilica di San Lorenzo fuori le mura, one of the 7 major pilgrimage churches of Rome. For generations, the faithful have come there to pray, reflect, and walk in the shadow of a man who endured the flames with unwavering grace. But St. Lawrence's influence extended far beyond Rome. In Spain, his homeland king, Philip II, commissioned one of the most magnificent religious complexes in Europe, El Escorial. Built in the 16th century, the royal monastery was intentionally designed in the shape of a grill, a striking tribute to the instrument of Lawrence's martyrdom. It stands not just as architecture, but as symbol, a reminder that suffering can be transformed into sanctity. Artists, too, were captivated by his story. Painters like Fra Angelico, Titian, and Rubens depicted Lawrence not in agony, but in glory surrounded by light, strength, and serenity. Poet Prudentius praised him in verse, capturing the spiritual heroism of a man who found transcendence in torment. St. Lawrence's legacy is more than a tale of torture rates, a celebration of courage, humility, and even humor in the face of darkness. He stands as a radiant symbol of how faith can endure fire and emerge immortal. St. Lawrence's life and death left behind far more than ash and memory. They left a message. In the face of power and persecution, he declared something revolutionary. The poor are the true treasures of the Church. It was a statement not just of faith, but of values, boldly rejecting wealth, status, and fear in favor of compassion, humility, and divine purpose. His serenity in suffering has long been viewed not as superhuman, but supernatural. Theologians like St. Augustine wrote that it wasn't the fire beneath Lawrence that burned, but the fire of God's love within him. That love, they believed, transformed unbearable pain into sacred peace. Even his name Laurentius carries symbolic weight. In Latin, it's linked to the laurel, a wreath of victory. And truly, Lawrence's triumph wasn't over Rome, but over fear, cruelty, and despair. Today, he is honored as the patron saint of the poor, of librarians, for his guardianship of sacred knowledge, and perhaps with divine irony of cooks, because of the grill that became both his torment and his triumph. His feast day, the 10th of August, is commemorated not only by prayer, but by nature itself. Every year, the night sky blazes with the Perseid meteor shower known in Catholic tradition as the Tears of St. Lawrence. It is as if heaven remembers him with trails of light, the same way he lit the darkness with courage and grace. More than a martyr, Lawrence became a mirror, a reflection of what true strength, true wealth, and true faith look like. His legacy dares us to ask, what would we die for? But more importantly, what are we truly living for?